The Emirati trade minister received the briefing at 7 in the morning, not from his own intelligence service, from a specific European shipping executive whose company moves 40,000 containers annually through Jebel Ali and who had just returned from a maritime industry conference in Singapore where the specific conversations that happened between shipping executives who need each other to be honest had produced a picture that the Emirati trade minister needed to understand immediately. The picture was this. 3 of the 5 largest global container shipping lines had quietly redirected between 8 and 15% of their Red Sea corridor volume from Jebel Ali to Saudi Red Sea ports over the past 90 days. Not announced. Not publicly acknowledged. Quietly. Through the specific operational decisions that shipping line network planners make on a rolling basis as commercial conditions evolve, the volume had not disappeared. It had moved. And the specific reason it had moved was not anything the shipping executives would publicly characterize as Saudi pressure. In the private conversations at the Singapore conference, they were more direct. The commercial conditions on the Saudi Red Sea port route had become systematically better than the commercial conditions on the Jebel Ali route, in ways that made redirecting profitable traffic the obvious commercial choice. The Emirati trade minister had 3 questions. When did this start? How much volume had moved? And was it reversible? The shipping executive's answers were 9 months ago, substantial and accelerating, and not easily reversible without understanding what changed the commercial conditions in the first place. The Emirati trade minister understood. 9 months ago was when the Red Sea Integrated Corridor Management Framework had been operational long enough for its systematic effects to become visible in the shipping company's commercial analysis. Substantial and accelerating meant the framework was working at scale. Not easily reversible meant the administrative architecture that had changed the commercial conditions was self-reinforcing in the specific way that systematic institutional friction is designed to be. MBS had built a machine. The machine was running. The UAE's most profitable trade route was losing traffic. And the specific European shipping executive, whose company moves 40,000 containers through Jebel Ali annually, was the specific person who told the Emirati trade minister what his own intelligence service had not yet fully characterized in its assessment reports. By the end of this video, you are going to understand the specific mechanism through which MBS's Red Sea machine works, why 9 months was the specific timeline at which its effects became visible to the shipping industry, what the Emirati trade minister did when he understood what the shipping executive had told him, and whether the machine can be stopped or whether the UAE's most profitable trade route is already on a trajectory that the comprehensive settlement framework is the only instrument that can redirect. Let us start with the machine itself and how it was built over the years before it was activated. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 infrastructure investment in Red Sea port development has a public narrative and a strategic narrative. The public narrative is economic diversification. Saudi Arabia is investing in port, logistics, and free zone infrastructure to develop non-oil economic sectors that create private sector employment and diversify the kingdom's revenue base away from petroleum dependence. This narrative is accurate. The investment is real. The economic diversification objective is genuine. The strategic narrative is what the infrastructure investment makes possible beyond economic diversification. Saudi Arabia's Red Sea coast runs from the Gulf of Aqaba in the north to the Bab el-Mandeb in the south. It is the longest contiguous stretch of commercially valuable maritime coastline in the Arabian Peninsula. Every vessel transiting the Red Sea in either direction passes through waters that Saudi Arabia's Maritime Authority has jurisdiction over and that Saudi Arabia's port infrastructure has the capacity to serve. Building world-class port infrastructure at Yanbu, Jeddah, and the new King Solomon port complex at Neom creates the specific commercial alternative to Jebel Ali that the Red Sea framework requires to be effective. Administrative friction alone does not redirect traffic. Administrative friction combined with a better commercial alternative does. The infrastructure investment is the better commercial alternative. The framework is the administrative friction. The combination is the machine. The machine took years to build because the infrastructure investment takes years to develop to the specific quality and capacity that commercial shipping requires, to consider it a genuine alternative to Jebel Ali's established hub excellence. Jebel Ali has 40 years of operational excellence built into its berth infrastructure, its logistics connections, its port community services, and its regulatory efficiency. Challenging that excellence requires building to a quality level that shipping lines assess as competitive before the commercial comparison between Jebel Ali and Saudi Red Sea ports becomes meaningful. 9 years ago, Saudi Red Sea ports were not at a quality level that made commercial comparison with Jebel Ali meaningful. The infrastructure quality gap was too large and the logistics connectivity gap was too large for shipping lines to seriously consider redirecting volume from Jebel Ali to Saudi Red Sea ports regardless of what commercial incentives Saudi port authorities offered. 9 months ago, Saudi Red Sea ports crossed a specific quality and connectivity threshold at which the commercial comparison became meaningful, the Yanbu port expansion completion. the Jeddah Islamic Port's new container terminal commissioning, the King Salman Port Complex's initial operational capability certification. Each of these milestones represented the specific infrastructure quality achievement that made Saudi Red Sea ports a genuine commercial alternative to Jebel Ali, rather than an aspirational one. The machine's activation was therefore the activation of the administrative framework against the backdrop of the infrastructure quality threshold having been crossed. The framework had been designed and ready for years. It was activated at the specific moment when the infrastructure quality made the framework's commercial preference logic applicable to shipping company traffic allocation decisions. Before the infrastructure crossed the quality threshold, the framework's administrative friction would not have redirected traffic because the alternative commercial conditions were not attractive enough to overcome Jebel Ali's quality premium. After the threshold was crossed, the framework's administrative friction redirected traffic because the alternative commercial conditions were now attractive enough to make the friction's commercial cost exceed the switching cost. The 9-month timeline that the European shipping executive described to the Emirati trade minister is precisely the timeline between the infrastructure threshold crossing and the shipping industry's commercial analysis, producing traffic allocation decisions that reflect the changed commercial conditions. 9 months is the specific lag time between when the commercial conditions change and when the shipping industry's rolling contract cycles and network planning processes translate the changed conditions into visible traffic allocation shifts. The Emirati trade minister's immediate response to the shipping executive's briefing was to convene an emergency assessment that included DP World's commercial intelligence team, the UAE's maritime authority technical experts, and the specific port industry consultants who have the deepest knowledge of how shipping line commercial analysis works and what it would take to reverse the commercial conditions that the Red Sea framework has created. The emergency assessment produced 3 specific findings that the Emirati trade minister found simultaneously alarming and partially reassuring. The alarming finding was that the Red Sea framework's administrative friction is legally defensible in every element, and that the specific international maritime law frameworks that the UAE could invoke to challenge the framework provide inadequate remedy for the systematic commercial disadvantage that the framework creates. Saudi Arabia is exercising sovereign maritime authority through legitimate administrative means. International maritime law does not prohibit sovereign maritime authority from being exercised in ways that have asymmetric commercial effects on vessels bound for different destinations. The partially reassuring finding was that the specific shipping categories most affected by the traffic redirection are the most commodity-like transshipment categories where the hub value proposition is weakest and where commercial sensitivity to systematic administrative friction is highest. The specialized cargo categories where Jebel Ali's unique handling capabilities, financial services integration, and specific customer relationship depth create genuine irreplaceable value have shown less traffic redirection than the commodity transshipment categories. The strategic finding was that the framework's commercial effectiveness is producing a natural segmentation of the Red Sea corridor's commercial traffic between Saudi Red Sea ports and Jebel Ali. Commodity transshipment volume is moving toward Saudi Red Sea ports, where price and schedule efficiency are the primary commercial drivers. Specialized cargo volume is remaining at Jebel Ali, where unique capability and relationship depth are the primary commercial drivers. This segmentation is not the UAE's preferred outcome. The UAE would prefer all volume to remain at Jebel Ali. But it is a defensible outcome from which the UAE can build a specific commercial position that the Red Sea framework's commodity volume redirection does not eliminate, a Jebel Ali that has lost commodity transshipment volume but has retained and deepened its specialized cargo dominance is a Jebel Ali that has been reconfigured rather than destroyed. The Emirati trade minister's strategic response to the assessment's findings was to accelerate the specific investment programs that deepen Jebel Ali's specialized cargo capabilities while reducing the infrastructure investment in commodity transshipment capacity that Saudi Red Sea ports have made less commercially necessary for the UAE to maintain its scale. The strategic response is the specific adaptive behavior that MBS's machine was designed to produce, not UAE collapse, UAE specialization, a UAE that concentrates its commercial position in the specific cargo categories where Jebel Ali's unique value resists commodity-style commercial redirection is a UAE that has been guided toward a commercial position that is complementary to Saudi Red Sea port commodity dominance rather than competitive with it. The machine did exactly what it was designed to do, not destroy Jebel Ali. Reconfigure the UAE's commercial position toward the specific complementary specialization that Saudi Arabia's regional commercial architecture can accommodate without the direct competition that Jebel Ali's previous commodity transshipment dominance represented. The Emirati trade minister understood this after the emergency assessment. The European shipping executive had not just told him that volume was moving. He had told him that the movement was structured in a specific way that was designed to produce a specific outcome rather than to simply damage the UAE's commercial position indiscriminately. 9 months, volume moving, the machine running, and the UAE adapting to the specific complementary position that the machine's precision was designed to guide it toward, not through confrontation. Through the specific commercial logic of administrative systems that shape commercial behavior without requiring the overt coercion that international law prohibits and that diplomatic cost makes impractical. That is MBS's Red Sea blockade. Not a blockade in any legal sense, a precision commercial reconfiguration instrument that uses Saudi sovereign maritime authority to guide the Gulf's commercial geography toward the specific architecture that Saudi Arabia's regional vision requires. Legal, precise, effective. And the specific instruments that explains why 9 months after its full activation, the Emirati trade minister was receiving an emergency briefing from a European shipping executive at 7 in the morning. The machine is running. The UAE is adapting. The Red Sea corridor is being reconfigured. And the comprehensive settlement framework that the Islamabad process is building is the specific diplomatic instrument that can formalize the reconfiguration as a complementary architecture, rather than allowing it to continue as a competitive commercial war that neither country benefits from sustaining indefinitely. Let us now examine the specific shipping industry dynamics that make 9 months the precise lag time between commercial condition changes and visible traffic allocation shifts, because understanding this lag is essential to understanding both why the machine's effects are accelerating and why reversing them requires more than matching the commercial conditions that created them. Shipping line network planning operates on specific cycles that are driven by contract duration, vessel deployment commitments, and port call schedule coordination. A large container shipping line like Maersk or MSC or CMA CGM does not reallocate port calls week to week based on current commercial conditions. It allocates on a rolling basis where current commercial analysis informs the planning cycles that govern where vessels call 6 to 12 months from now. The first 3 months of the Red Sea Framework's activation produced commercial condition data that shipping line network planners observed and analyzed. The network planners fed their analysis into the rolling planning cycles that govern port call allocations. The planning cycles translated the analysis into specific network rebalancing decisions. The network rebalancing decisions produced the actual vessel deployment changes that redirected traffic from Jebel Ali to Saudi Red Sea ports. The 9-month timeline from framework activation to visible traffic redirection is therefore the combination of 3 months of commercial data accumulation, 2 to 3 months of planning cycle analysis, and 3 to 4 months of vessel deployment change implementation. The lag is structural rather than accidental. The specific implication of this structural lag for the Red Sea Framework's future trajectory is that the traffic redirection that is visible now in the shipping manifests reflects commercial condition data that is 9 months old. The current commercial conditions, 9 months more of systematic administrative friction and Saudi Red Sea port competitive development, have not yet fully translated into traffic allocation decisions through the planning cycle and implementation lag. The traffic redirection that will become visible 9 months from now reflects the commercial condition data that shipping line network planners are analyzing today. And today's commercial conditions are systematically more favorable to Saudi Red Sea ports and systematically less favorable to Jebel Ali than the conditions that produced the redirection the Emirati trade minister received an emergency briefing about. This compounding lag structure is the specific commercial dynamic that makes the Red Sea Framework's effects self-reinforcing rather than equilibrating. Each planning cycle that processes more systematically disadvantageous Jebel Ali commercial data produces more traffic redirection. Each traffic redirection reduces Jebel Ali's volume base. Reduced volume base degrades hub economics. Degraded hub economics make Jebel Ali's commercial conditions relatively worse. Worse relative commercial conditions produce more traffic redirection in the next planning cycle. The self-reinforcing dynamic can be interrupted by a sufficiently large improvement in Jebel Ali's relative commercial conditions that reverses the planning cycle analysis before the compounding has reached an irreversible scale. The UAE's strategic response is attempting to produce exactly this interruption through the specialized cargo deepening investment and the specific commercial incentive programs that the emergency assessment recommended. Whether the UAE's interruption response can overcome the compounding dynamic before the compounding reaches irreversible scale is the specific commercial race that the Red Sea Framework's activation has initiated. The Islamabad Comprehensive Settlement Framework is the diplomatic instrument that ends the race by formalizing the complementary architecture before the compounding dynamic determines the commercial outcome through purely commercial mechanisms. For MBS, the specific timing of the comprehensive settlement relative to the compounding dynamics progress is a strategic calculation that he has been monitoring through the commercial intelligence that Saudi Maritime Authority and Saudi Vision 2030 development teams provide. A settlement that formalizes the complementary architecture before the compounding produces natural volume redirection at scale, requires Saudi Arabia to accept the complementary architecture as a formalized outcome rather than simply continuing the compounding that would eventually produce the commodity volume dominance that the framework is building toward. The specific Saudi calculation about when the complementary architecture formalization serves Saudi interests better than continued compounding is the private strategic analysis that the comprehensive settlement's economic architecture dimension requires Saudi decision makers to resolve. If the compounding is producing natural volume redirection at a pace that will eventually achieve Saudi commercial primacy without requiring formal UAE acceptance, Saudi Arabia may prefer continued compounding over formal complementary architecture that requires Saudi concessions to UAE specialized cargo interests. If the compounding's pace is slow enough that formal complementary architecture achieves Saudi commercial primacy faster and more durably than continued compounding would achieve it through natural commercial mechanisms, Saudi Arabia may prefer the formal architecture that secures the commercial outcome with greater certainty and greater speed than the compounding's gradual trajectory provides. The Islamabad process's economic architecture negotiation is therefore simultaneously a commercial strategy conversation and a timing calculation about whether formal settlement or continued compounding better serves Saudi commercial primacy objectives. Pakistani mediators who are working on the economic architecture dimension are working within this specific strategic calculation without having full visibility into Saudi's internal assessment of which trajectory better serves Saudi interests. For the UAE, the calculation is simpler. Every month of continued compounding reduces the UAE's negotiating position in the formal architecture negotiation. A complementary architecture negotiated before more compounding reduces. Jebel Ali's volume base is a better complementary architecture for the UAE than one negotiated after additional compounding, has further reduced the commercial position that the UAE is trying to preserve within the complementary framework. UAE urgency for the economic architecture component of the comprehensive settlement is therefore stronger than Saudi urgency for the same component, which is the specific asymmetry in negotiating position that the Red Sea framework's compounding dynamic creates. The European shipping executive who briefed the Emirati trade minister at 7 in the morning was carrying intelligence that the shipping industry's commercial analysis produces naturally through its planning cycles. The UAE's emergency assessment translated that intelligence into the specific strategic response that the compounding dynamic required. And the Islamabad process is working to produce the formal complementary architecture before the compounding dynamic determines the commercial outcome through mechanisms that are harder to reverse than diplomatic agreements. MBS's machine is the Red Sea framework. Its mechanism is the compounding commercial redirection dynamic. Its timeline is the 9-month structural lag between commercial condition changes and visible traffic allocation shifts. And its outcome, either formal complementary architecture through the Islamabad settlement or continued compounding through commercial mechanisms, is being determined by the specific race between the Islamabad process and the compounding dynamic that the European shipping executive's 7 in the morning briefing told the Emirati trade minister is running ahead of schedule. The shipping manifests tell the story. 9 months in, substantial and accelerating, not easily reversible without understanding what changed the commercial conditions in the first place. The Emirati trade minister understands what changed the commercial conditions. MBS built a machine. The machine is running. And the question that the Islamabad process is working to answer before the machine answers it through the compounding dynamics natural commercial progress is whether the UAE's most profitable trade route is reconfigured through diplomatic agreement or through the specific commercial mechanism that administrative sophistication is designed to operate. The final element of this story is what the European shipping executive's 7 in the morning briefing reveals about how information moves between the commercial world and the political world, and why the timing of the Emirati trade minister's awareness matters for the response options that remain available. Intelligence about commercial threats reaches political decision makers through different channels than intelligence about military threats. Military intelligence has dedicated collection systems and analysis pipelines that are specifically designed to identify and communicate developing threats to political and military decision makers on timelines that allow response before the threat materializes. Commercial intelligence reaches political decision makers through the specific informal networks of industry relationships, trade association connections, and private sector executive interactions that produce the specific conversations between a European shipping executive and a Gulf trade minister at a Singapore conference that eventually becomes an emergency briefing at 7 in the morning. The 9-month lag between the Red Sea Framework's activation and the Emirati trade minister's emergency briefing is partly the structural shipping industry planning lag we analyzed. It is also partly the information pathway lag between commercial reality and political awareness. in the specific domain of administrative commercial competition, where no single visible event triggers intelligence collection in the way that a missile launch or a military movement does. Saudi Arabia's administrative commercial competition against Jebel Ali was not a missile launch. It was a series of routine administrative decisions in maritime inspection, port access allocation, traffic management advocacy, and safety regulation enforcement that individually look like normal exercises of sovereign maritime authority and collectively constitute a precision commercial reconfiguration machine. The intelligence analysis required to recognize the collective pattern from the individual administrative decisions is the specific type of analysis that commercial intelligence systems are less well designed to conduct than military intelligence systems. The 7 in the morning briefing happened because commercial networks eventually produced the information that formal intelligence collection missed, and from the Singapore conference conversations that the formal intelligence system had not yet fully assembled into the pattern that the trade minister needed to understand. This information pathway difference is the specific intelligence gap that MBS's administrative commercial competition exploits. Military competition activates intelligence collection systems that are well designed to track and characterize the competition. Administrative commercial competition activates commercial analysis systems that reach political decision makers through informal networks with 9-month lags rather than through dedicated intelligence pipelines with real-time awareness. The UAE's response to having its most important commercial intelligence arrive through an informal shipping executive network rather than through a formal intelligence system includes the specific decision to establish dedicated commercial intelligence analysis focused on the Red Sea corridor's competitive dynamics that can provide political decision makers with awareness on timelines comparable to what military intelligence provides for military threats. Building this commercial intelligence capability takes time. The machine has been running for 9 months. The awareness arrived through informal channels. The formal commercial intelligence capability is being built in response to the awareness. And the Islamabad process is being informed by the commercial intelligence that the emergency assessment produced, while the formal capability is being constructed. MBS built the machine. The machine ran for 9 months before the UAE understood what the machine was doing to the UAE's most profitable trade route. The understanding arrived through a European shipping executive's conversation at a Singapore conference. The response is being built while the machine continues to run. And the Islamabad Comprehensive Settlement is the diplomatic instrument that can formalize the complementary architecture before the machine's compounding dynamic determines the commercial outcome through mechanisms that no amount of post-awareness response can easily reverse. The 7 in the morning briefing was the specific moment the UAE's response began. The machine had a 9-month head start. The race between the response and the machine is the specific commercial competition that the Islamabad process is the only instrument capable of ending. Before the race's outcome is determined by the compounding dynamic rather than by diplomatic agreement. That is MBS's Red Sea blockade. A machine, a 9-month head start, a 7 in the morning briefing. And the Islamabad process racing to formalize the complementary architecture before the machine's compounding logic makes the commercial outcome a fait accompli that formal architecture can only ratify rather than design. The Emirati trade minister who received the briefing is not a passive actor. He has resources, intelligence, commercial relationships, and the specific institutional capability of a state that has spent 4 decades building the world's most sophisticated commercial hub. The response to the machine is genuine, and it is being executed with the urgency that 7 in the morning emergency briefings produce. But MBS's machine has a 9-month structural advantage that the response cannot eliminate quickly. The compounding dynamic is self-reinforcing. The planning cycle lag means that the traffic allocation decisions being made today reflect commercial conditions from 9 months ago. The conditions from today will produce their own traffic allocation decisions 9 months from now. And each cycle's decisions reflect conditions that are systematically more favorable to Saudi Red Sea ports than the previous cycle. The only outcome that stops the machine before the compounding makes the commercial redirection irreversible is the comprehensive settlement that formalizes the complementary architecture on terms that both Saudi Arabia and the UAE can accept. Saudi Red Sea corridor primacy for commodity transshipment. UAE Jebel Ali specialization for the categories where unique capability creates irreplaceable value. Both commercial architectures recognized and formalized, rather than one compounding to dominance through commercial mechanisms. The European shipping executive was honest at the Singapore conference because he needed the Emirati trade minister to understand what his company's traffic analysis was producing so that the Emirati trade minister could do something that would preserve Jebel Ali's commercial viability before the compounding made preservation impossible. Something is happening. The Islamabad process is what is happening. And the comprehensive settlement is the specific something that the European shipping executive's honest conversation at 7 in the morning was ultimately designed to produce by making the Emirati trade minister understand the urgency of producing it.